recording, start streaming. Can you just say anything? Interesting, but didn't actually grab it. Well, we're live, and I'm doing tech support. Let's figure this out. All right. Deleting audio output capture. Let's add a new one. Okay. Device. Okay. Now say something.
Something. Is this working now?
Perfect. Yeah,
We've got a bit of capture. Nice.
All right. Cool. So, we're live. We're doing this thing. Sam's here with a gin. If you're watching this, you can see that the background image is just like 1,000 bottles of gin. Sam will not be drinking that much.
I don't know.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see how long this goes. I'm never gonna say never. Who knows? Maybe you just fall asleep on camera.
For 3 hours.
For like 3 hours, and I just stream you sleeping and me rambling.
The most iconic thing to happen during this pandemic.
It would be
honestly.
It would be perfect. I mean, nothing matters anymore, so why not?
True.
Anyway, so who are you?
So I am Sam, otherwise known around the internet as RPG Webby, and I somehow became the head of RPG development at Modiphius Entertainment. And then we've just changed that to head of product as we've restructured the company a little bit recently. And I've also just started an indie RPG publishing label with a friend of mine and a colleague called Black Cats Gaming. We just did a Kickstarter August last year about a 5e kind of modern take on the game, all action and espionage, called The Spy Game. And yeah. That's where I am at the moment. I literally today was writing a bit of the GM chat.
Okay. So that's a lot, both in terms of responsibilities and stuff to dig into. As I said before we went live, you're probably of like the 36 people I'm going to be interviewing. I imagine. I think you're in the let's call it the greatest position of power.
I don't know about that.
Modiphius is a big company and you got a big role. But so this is actually the second time we've ever spoken by voice.
I actually think this is it, right? Yeah. This is crazy.
The first time was short.
I legit love this story, and I tell it to people.
Really?
Yeah.
I want to hear your retelling of it.
So, we just come back to the JW Marriott at Gen Con. I swear it was the JW Marriott.
Yep, it was.
And I think, weirdly enough, was it? Yeah, it was the second year. So we were staying there upstairs. And we've just come back from the Ennies, where Star Trek had won, I think, a silver for rules. There was a silver for product, I think, or I can't honestly remember that one, but there was a gold for a miniatures set.
Yes.
So we'd got we'd collect our little Ennies, and we were having a good time, and I'd managed to make a little fun speech, and quick, it was a bit of an ego boost as well, right? The first year I went to Gen Con, that year before that, we'd launched Star Trek, which was huge for me because it was the first project I'd ever managed, the first RPG book I'd ever managed. It had been received so well. And we just go up to get a round of drinks at the bar. And then in some kind of proper Hollywood weird fashion, the guy just goes away and we're like, can we pay? And he was like, oh, no, that guy over there's just paid for your drinks. We're like, what the fuck? I'm being really British about it. I've just gone round to your booth and gone, dude, thanks, but now we have to buy you a drink. And you're like, no, it's fine, it's fine. And we're like, no, but we're British. We have to now buy you a drink. We can't allow this status quo to be unbalanced. And I don't think we did. I think you talked us out of it. You're
Yep.
just like, no, well done. It was well deserved. I really liked it and stuff like that. So it was, it was really appreciative.
Yeah.
So
I'd
first impressions, I guess.
yeah. I just I remember I had met you with
Chris was there.
Yeah, Chris was there,
Yeah.
and skinny
So
guy with
John,
black hair and glasses.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So John headed up our war game side of things,
Mhm.
and is now heading up the creative part, the graphic design and the artwork and studio side of things.
Okay.
So all the miniatures and stuff.
Um,
Yeah, the three of us.
I'm trying to think of how I knew who you were.
Yeah.
That's the big question that I have, is because we'd never met.
No, that was literally the first time I'd ever met you and known of you. I hadn't followed you on Twitter or anything yet.
I definitely hadn't followed you on Twitter. Modiphius was just kind of like a company that I was aware of, and I was like,
Yeah.
it's good work. But yeah, in some way, which I'll probably never figure out, I recognized you at the bar at the JW Marriott. So this is conversation number 2, and it involves alcohol as well.
Yeah. I want to ask you a question.
Go ahead, please.
What actually went through your mind? Why did you buy us a drink? Because you could have maybe just said, "Hey guys, congrats," or you could have just sparked up a conversation or something. But you got the bartender somehow to sneakily get pay for our drinks.
Yeah, I mean, you
like-
guys were just sitting at the other end of the big bar that was
Yeah.
there, and I think I was just getting a water, and I recognized you, and I just gestured the bartender over, and I don't know, it just seemed the decent thing to do. I don't know,
Cheers, man.
when somebody is fairly new and they do good work and it's recognized, I feel like in the business, unless it's something really, really hype, right? There are those products that have a huge footprint, and then they're just, everybody's going to approach them on the floor, in their hotel. But I feel like Star Trek was a book that I really enjoyed, and I really have enjoyed the whole product line. And it was from a company that, at that point, I mean, what did Modiphius done? Acton Cthulhu?
Yeah, it started with Acton Cthulhu. That was the first Kickstarter Chris did. And he got about £160,000, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and it was big, and I remember liking it. I thought it was an interesting concept. I mean, I'm not necessarily one who's big into most Lovecraft mythos products, but I thought it was neat, and it was product 2. It was a big get of an IP, and I don't know. It seemed the decent thing to do, to buy the guys who won some drinks.
Nice. We've done a couple other things beforehand. Chris had got the license for Mutant Chronicles,
That's right.
He'd done a 4th edition. Was it the 3rd?
I think it was.
So he'd done an updated edition of that. They'd done Thunderbirds, the board game, before with Matt Leacock.
That had already come out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, for sure. It was out when I joined the company, and so I joined the company a year and a half, or a year and a bit, before I met you. That was already out by then, I'm sure. Mutant Chronicles was out. Infinity, based on the skirmish game, the miniatures game, was still in development as an RPG.
Okay.
Because that first year I met Justin, who was line managing it, and then Conan.
Oh, Conan was already out, the 2d6 one?
Conan,
Or 2D20?
Conan, yeah. Conan wasn't out yet. It came out, I think, maybe the first or second quarter after that Gen Con. So what, 2019? No, it must be sooner than that.
Yeah.
It must have been sooner than that.
Because that product line is 12 books deep right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, we just finished the 3rd wave of the Kickstarter, and those books now are starting to come out. No, it had been out because it had been out. I think it had been out early that year. I think it was probably about 6 to 9 months into its like shelf lifespan, like retail lifespan.
I know how I knew who you were.
Oh,
Marco Rafala
yeah, Marco.
is a Brooklyn guy.
Yeah.
And I had swung by the Modiphius booth to say hi to Marco, and he pointed you out.
Was probably blue t-shirt,
Yeah,
helping someone with some books or some
just
miniatures or
furiously,
something.
just you had like a full pallet of Star Trek books.
Oh, we had, yeah, we'd piled them up and everything the
Yep,
year before, yeah.
and that was it. I'd seen you in passing, and I just recognized you at the bar.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. Nice.
wow, yeah, all right. So, what's okay? So a big question for me, and
All
this is
right.
a thing people come back and forth on a lot. There's a lot of, I think, like back channel, like, is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? But you guys as a company have staked a pretty major claim to licensed IP, and it's worked out pretty well, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You've had some really big gets. You're a Alien, Dune upcoming, but like also Conan, also Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mutant is a thing that like I remember being a kid and thinking the minis for Mutant were cooler than the minis for Warhammer. And so like I got really into Mutant.
That's bold, man.
Yeah. I get it. People like really love Warhammer. I love me some 40k lore. I'm listening to 40k audiobooks to pass the time, but like I really loved Mutant as a kid. So you have this shop that's kind of staked its claim to IP in a sense. Obviously, you also do the work with Free League, um, which
Yeah.
is a
Who are the
thing.
guys that have the Alien
Yeah, who are the
game?
guys who have the Alien? Or do you just handle English language distribution for that, or?
We did. They've actually now we've quite amicably gone our separate ways on that.
Oh.
We're still quite close. We still help them out with stuff and some logistics.
Mhm.
But now they have their own distribution channels and stuff. I guess without naming names, they're kind of the same channels as ours now.
Okay.
Essentially, the way that it was working was Modiphius was a way for them to get into the American market through our consolidator.
Okay.
As the consolidator wasn't taking on any more clients at the time, so Chris was helping people out by kind of sticking a little Modiphius label in the corner, but then just letting people kind of get on that, get into that route to market. And obviously now that they've got some big hits, Tales from the Loop, Things from the Flood, etc., as well as Alien, Coriolis, and all that kind of stuff that people are really enjoying, they've managed to then kind of get on board as their own client. So
Gotcha. Well, you know what? I don't actually feel bad about not doing my research. That's not what this is about. Fuck it. Learned a new thing today. Excellent. Question's still the same. I feel like you guys have a product line that has a lot of IP. What's that like? I mean, you're now head of product, but like up until recently, head of RPG development as a vertical.
yeah.
What's that like from a creative standpoint? What's that like from a sales standpoint?
It's really interesting from a creative standpoint for me. I have never particularly been one to like really bang the drum of my own ideas or be that originally creative. I tend to, in whatever I've done, and I'll come on to my theatre backstory quite soon because I always tell it, is I've always tended to take other people's ideas and help them either shape them or do something with them and kind of go off in a different direction with them, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
It's kind of vague, but
No. I get it. I think of it as the editorial writer.
Yeah, yeah. And I am a much better kind of reviewer or editor of things, particularly stuff like adventure material, or different kind of RPG chapters, than I am writing them myself, I think. hence the kind of connection I'd say maybe with the spy game to 5e, where
Sure.
we've gone, well, here is a very popular system that works very well in and of itself. So let's base something off of this, and let's not change it too much, and let's just tweak it around the edges and make it fit the thing we're looking to make, and then off we go. Most
My
of the work is already done, right?
my legitimate entry into the industry was exactly that. It was a science fiction version of 5e before Starfinder came out.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, I tended to do that a lot. So, working with an IP or working with IPs is great because you almost have like a support structure there before you in terms of all of the brand stuff. So you already know what some of the trade dress might have to look like, or at least you've already got a starting point. If you're working with something purely from like a completely original creation, you've got to generate everything. And if you're going to do it right, like kind of professionally, you're going to have to be very rigorous with yourself about like what is best practice. So you need to create style guides. You need to be rigorous about that, and you need to hold yourself to that kind of account too. So if you start spelling something differently, or if you start using a different color scheme, people are going to have to go. It's that whole like a kind of, you don't want to go up to the auteur and go, oh, but you're doing your own thing wrong, because they're going to go, no, I'm not. I'm just doing my thing. But so you have to be that strict with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got an IP, invariably you've already got that style guide. You've already got what brand want you to do. You've already got the kind of the design constraints around the game, which is, I find at least, legitimately easier to do, I think, because you already know like where you're headed in a way.
I mean, yeah, that sounds delightful. That sounds like
Yeah.
for me, the biggest burden is always that like initial generative process, and if I can just situate it in a world that's already existing, cool, awesome, perfect. I can just get right to the meat of the thing. I can do what's actually fun and interesting.
Yeah, because I often think like, if you're just sat wherever your creative space is and you go, I want to make a role playing game, like that's like almost like a void. It's
Yeah,
like,
that's when you
great.
go to the fridge and you crack open a bottle of something and just like
Yeah.
don't do it.
What do I? But and then you're like, well, what do I want it to do, or Whereas if you go, well, we're going to make Star Trek, but we're going to make a role playing game of it. Fantastic! I already know what I want to do. Okay, so Star Trek is about crews of people. The ship is a character as well. They go off on amazing scientific adventures and find new life and new civilizations, and boldly go where no one has gone before. And fuck me, we've made it halfway. Like we've already
Done.
basically got the game in our heads,
Yeah.
right? So, like for me, that is an easy creative process. The obvious difficulty about working with that kind of thing is that you have to have this relationship with brand, and you have to pass everything by them. And we've had a very good relationship with CBS, and they've been very good at pretty much signing everything off we've ever submitted to them perfectly fine. But it obviously takes time. So you're adding, a month, 6 weeks to read a manuscript, a couple of weeks to approve some artwork, another couple of weeks to look at the layout concept, another few weeks to look at the layout, and then a couple of weeks or so to look at the pre-production proofs. Now you've added 3 or more months to your development cycle.
Yeah.
And that just means that things take longer.
So, a follow-up question, specifically regarding brands and stuff like that. So I think in the history of the hobby, the big example of like a famous IP get that birthed a line and supported a company is probably like West End Games and the D6 Star Wars.
Yeah.
And in the history of that, one of the things that comes of it is kind of the entire expanded universe. That's kind of the seed of it. There was basically nothing other than the films and that one crap Christmas special, and then West End Games gets the IP, and there's this whole universe that they generate from it, and that becomes canon, essentially, for 2 decades until Disney buys LucasArts and everything goes the wayside.
Yeah.
Have you had any kind of authorial freedom in that regard? And do you even want that? Right? I have the entire I think I have literally every Star Trek product you guys have put out.
Sure.
Um, and a lot of that stuff is like, I'm a big Star Trek nerd.
Yeah, yeah.
I recognize a lot of the material. There's some like really good deep cuts in it, um, but a lot of it is stuff that at least passively I'm familiar with. Like I get where it's coming from,
Mm.
and it's a lived-in world. Um, do you want to kind of push the boundaries of that? Have you been allowed to by anyone that you've worked with thus far?
I think we've certainly been allowed to. It's not something that has been like a main objective or like our raison d'etre for doing the project, but something that CBS are very accommodating to is that kind of what is kind of beta canon, what is
Sure.
like memory alpha canon, right? Um, Anything you see in a show is canonical. Um, Anything that doesn't appear on screen that they didn't make is just basically, yeah, have fun, do what you like. And this is the crazy thing. And I've said this quite a few times to many people, and I really don't mind saying it now. Like, I think CBS could not care less if you decided that Captain Kirk was now like a green transgendered alien floating around the universe and like I don't know, kind of seducing people like in their minds, like telepathically or something. You could do something off the wall, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, okay."
Yeah.
But you didn't italicize the word enterprise. So can you italicize the word enterprise, please, here? And the USS needs to have dots in between. So because that's the relationship really that I don't think people quite understand is that I may be a bit like yourself in that question. People come at it from a kind of creative, cool, what could we make? What's their thing about canon? What are the little nitpicks they have about the certain universe? It's like sometimes they don't give a shit. But they have a brand guideline that means that you need to like italicize these words, you need to spell them correctly, you need to do this stuff, and that's brand. That's not, our text isn't going off to like Roddenberry's son and like Rick Berman and the producers and stuff. It's going to a small office of people who know the brand really well because that's their job. They might be very passionate about it, which a couple of people that we work with are, but it's their job. So they look at it and they tick the boxes. They make sure we've done it correctly, and they make sure that we've done it right in terms of canon. We're not contradicting something that's necessarily on screen. The other, particularly to Star Trek, the other thing that we have that I guess I've not mentioned, or I'm not playing down in any way, is that we had a Simon Schuster editor work for us on the books.
Okay.
And he was basically our kind of canon editor. And he's worked on Star Trek for many, many years as an editor. And part of his editing work was checking things against the show, against the actual official canon. I mean, he was pulling stuff out of nowhere. Like drafts were coming in, particularly for the kind of earlier chapters that were about the setting and about the history of the galaxy and the Federation and stuff. And he was citing stuff, and he was going to particularly, he was like, I know there's that scene in that one episode of DS9 that I need to just go and rewatch so that I can advise you properly and stuff. And this is on RPG editing rates. This isn't on some kind of big money contract, right? But he was so passionate about it, and I'm so grateful for him for that. And I just remember vaguely one comment which just blew me away, and it was something about some Klingon event or ceremony or something, and he was like, I think this passage is referring to or implying the thing that happened here. If you're going to set the log on around this star date, I would do it in this half of the year, not this half of the year, because in this half of the year things change a bit. And I'm just like, what? How do you know that? What research did you have to do to like get there? I'm eternally grateful to him. And it's just insane. So that in collaboration, I guess, kind of indirectly with CBS's accommodating nature, and we were allowed to expand, I think, a fair bit on what was already there.
Okay.
But they have such a I think they have such a good understanding of what is this is canonical, and what isn't canonical. And let me spoil it for you, kids. Discovery is canonical. Picard is canonical. Everything like that. But everything you might read, all the novels and stuff. Even though we've pulled material from that,
that's not memory alpha.
It's memory beta, so it's all beta canon. It's all essentially, it's a kind of, could be something happening in the margins. We're not acknowledging it as a proper event in the history of the galaxy. But I guess if I'm just kind of free flowing here, the thing that kind of also I've observed that I kind of find funny and sometimes a little bit aggravating when you get the comments from the internet about this kind of stuff is the people who get so wrapped up in that kind of stuff.
I mean, that's my follow-up, right? Is this is all kind of from the corporate side, right? You have these, I don't want to call them strictures, right? They're as much support systems as they are strictures.
Yeah, brand guides,
right? Like something that helps you kind of head in the right direction. But they can be strict. They have things that need to be adhered to in very specific ways. But that's all from a kind of corporate or business standpoint. There is the other half of the equation, which is the fandom. When you're dealing with any kind of eternally beloved IP like that, you're going to get as much shit from those folks as from everyone else. And Star Trek is an obvious case. People get very into that. But then you also have, I'd say, like Vampire, right? People have been playing that game for 3 decades now, right? Like Vampire the Masquerade 1E came out in 1990, so I think it's literally 30 years. That's the length of my life.
Yeah,
that's as long as I've been alive.
I'm not much older.
Yeah. So I can imagine, like, obviously, and I don't really care to dig into this just because people have done it, and I think it's been done. But, like, there was drama around the original production of those products. They came into your hands after that drama occurred.
Yeah.
But you're kind of still in this position where people love those games. People love that IP. People are always hungry for more content. There is always a White Wolf product on the top 10 or top 15 of drive-thru-RPG.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It has been forever. On the fan side, like, how tightly do you have to play to the strictures? How close do you need to keep to the canon? Like, you had the London book come out recently, right?
Yeah. So we produced a Chronicle, The Fall of London.
Yeah.
Which literally chronicled how the Second Inquisition kind of dealt with London.
What was the research process for that? Like, what was the thinking in terms of how closely you'd need to adhere to what is essentially canon?
Pretty close. I mean, we work really closely with Paradox now anyway.
Okay.
And very closely with their editorial team. But we've spoken a lot about CBS, who are a company who are very well set up for licensing. They know what they're about, and they've done it for years. We're now working with quite a few companies, and I think there are more and more companies now who are getting into licensing their IP out.
Okay.
Who aren't as practiced, who don't have those structures in place. Like, for a bit of kind of boring day to day, like CBS has a fantastic portal that you submit things into.
Okay.
And it's a very intuitive interface, and you understand what's going on. Bethesda, similarly, for the Fallout and Elder Scrolls games that we make. So it's very well recorded. Everyone on both sides of the relationship have an understanding and a recording of how things have been approved, where things are. And you can literally point on a piece of paper and go, no, you approved this power armor. I'm just pulling an example out of my head, not an actual, not a real example. Totally. But you approved this power armor or whatever. And so we're going with it. Like, I'm sorry that actually you didn't think that the shoulder was quite right, or whatever it is.
We have the signature.
We have the signature, and this at the end of the day is about kind of money, really. You know, sorry to say the dirty word, but like, you know, so if you stop us now, we're halting production. We have to rerun loads of things, this, that, and the other. There's a big financial implication for us, and as a licensee, you know, we can't take that risk, which is why that whole structure is in place. Where now we're working with licensors who, as I say, aren't built up with those structures yet, are still learning how to do that themselves. So it becomes a much more, and with this is kind of, I think, I'm trying to actually phrase this, not phrase it in the right way. I'm actually just trying to get my head around kind of what I perceive the relationship to be. Is that they're in a different place, right?
Take a drink. That always helps with phrasing, getting things right.
That's fair. That's fair. Is that, you know, they're learning to be a licensor, whereas they'd had internal development before, and it was very kind of close-knit team working on it, to us putting stuff through their brand team now. So we work with an editor who is close on the canon. We have more marketing side of things. We have, obviously, business dev is a kind of a different branch of it, but we also have art. So, you know, we had to be very good at trying to divine what their creative vision was, because there were some style guides, there was some branding guides, and we were trying to just get more out of them and flesh more out of them and just properly solidify and codify them. And it was still an evolving process. I mean, they were still making changes in the margins, and you know, because obviously the video game is still in development, Bloodlines 2. So they're still making things work towards the video game. As Paradox have obviously, you know, acquired the brand for video games predominantly. So it's been, I guess, a more organic process, and it's been more about working out how we work together and about how we, what their actual like kind of brand is. So I mean, with something like Star Trek, you know, the brand is 60 years old, right? So, you know, if you're doing something in the original series, you've only got something that, you know, that you've got a complete package that happened 60 years ago, and you can't go outside of that bubble. Whereas something that is a bit more fluid and is a bit more, we're creating as a little bit as we go, then if you can drop something in, it might kind of start to warp it as well. And then you're like, okay, cool. Well, I can start injecting more and more of my stuff, and eventually you might come up against like a bit of a story that you've written, or a bit of description that you've done, or a bit of art piece, and then suddenly brand go, oh no, we've moved in this direction now, and then you're like, oh shit. So now, you know, we might have to like change things up, or we might have to go back to the artist and you know, pay them to change it or whatever. So that, you know, it's been more of a struggle with more recent IPs. Dune obviously is kind of in a similar boat, because we've been working with them, and I mean, you know, what licensed products for Dune have there ever been? One role-playing game about 20 years, 10 years ago, game, 20 years ago, and a board game, right? So, and I believe that was quite a closely run thing with the actual Herbert estate with Brian. So now we've got Legendary in the picture, and now, you know, they're obviously sending stuff to Brian on our behalf, but we're getting checks with Legendary. Everyone is still working out, particularly on their side, how they do, how they approve stuff, how they review stuff, and what our relationship is like. So again, it's been a bit more organic, and obviously as they've been developing the film, there have even been times when we ask them, okay, but we need to know how this looks, or what you're doing with this. And they're actually like, we don't know yet. Like, it's still in development, you know. But I don't think that's a big secret for any creative process. And it's going to happen from big budget Hollywood to someone in their third bedroom, like, you know, writing a game. You know, in a couple of days from now, I might suddenly go, oh, this one kind of subsystem of the spy game, it's going to change a bit, and I'm going to go off in this direction. Because it's still an evolving process.
Sure, and there are always going to be knock-on effects with something like that, where it's just like, how many dominoes fall. before
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you kind of catch the domino and go, okay, too many. Um, okay, so you've got Spy Game on the other side of
Hmm.
like your creative life, right?
Yeah, yeah.
One so a big question for me is like, where'd that come from, right? So you've obviously got some games like that in the historical milieu, right? You've
Hmm.
got Top Secret, you've got
Yeah,
Spycraft,
yeah.
but it's certainly not one of the best represented genres in
No.
in the business and the hobby. Um, are you like what made you go? Yeah, this is the thing that I want to do. And I guess a thing to lead into after that is like if Chris died tomorrow, left you the whole company, and it turns out he has like $10 million in the bank, and it all goes to you, but it has to go to a specific IP, and you get to pick it, and that's it. And you just like put $10 million on the table, and you can just pick up any IP you want.
Right.
What's that IP, and is it Bond? Like, is Spycraft your way, or is the Spy Game your way of like pursuing something that you deeply care about? Is it just like an interesting quirk thing? Yeah, just go.
For Spy Game for me, it was a not a passion project as such, but it's been something that's been brewing for a while. I did a fate hack of kind of spycrafty stuff. I
What's
enjoyed
that?
Spycraft Second Edition
What's
when
that
I
called? The fate
no,
hack.
it was. Oh, it didn't really have a name. I think it was just called Spy. I literally just did it for an RPG club. It's not available anywhere.
Oh,
I have
okay.
no links or anything to shill at that point. I was just doing it because I mean, this is a kind of cool tangent I actually was thinking about today and talking about where the way that the community in the industry is so like crazy in a way. If you go to a concert and you watch a symphony orchestra and you think, like, I used to play the trumpet, right? But say like I play or say you go along and you're like, okay, well I can play the trumpet
Mm-hmm.
pretty good standard, but I'm not like symphony frickin' orchestra standard. But so like anyone who to participate in the experience of listening to a symphony orchestra, you don't have to have any musical expertise whatsoever. So the barrier to entry to engage in the kind of hobby in a way is like right down here. Where am I? Oh, right on the screen. And then to be in the symphony orchestra, you're like up here somewhere. But the thing with like playing role play games is you have to wrap your head around the game, and kind of the more you play, the more you kind of get into like its rhythms and kind of how things actually work. And there is I believe, a kind of a common what's that phrase, like a community consciousness, right?
Okay.
Of kind of how role playing games work. I describe a thing, you tell me what you want to do. We use a mechanic to resolve it, and I tell you what happens, whether you succeed or fail, or whether you go in this way direction or that direction, right? And there's a kind of rhythm to it and everything like that. And so we have this kind of common, these kind of concepts kind of swirling around on our heads and stuff. But in order to not even like, make something that blows everything else out the water, but to make a kind of a working game, like competent game, the barrier to entry is here. And really, only the barrier entry to playing and to GMing and stuff is like here. So it's very easy to make that leap up. So I mean, so I guess I was back in the club maybe a couple of years or a year before I joined Modiphius. I was kind of like, I'd started with D&D 4e. Boo. Yeah, I know.
I don't know, boo. I love 4E, so
I love it.
Yeah.
Legit love it. That is my D&D hot take. It's fun. It's an MMO on the board, and I don't care.
it's great.
Yeah, you get to pick something every single level. It was amazing. Anyway, so I started there, and I went to GMing very quickly because our GM was like every bad GM cliche you could imagine in one person. Like literally just wouldn't let us do stuff. We would have encounters where it was like, here's 100 zombies, and we're like, this is gonna take 5 fucking hours, dude. Like, what? Why are we even here? And we just had to like we basically had to go make a cup of tea or something and role play in the kitchen because at the table it was just kind of weird. He just didn't leave space for it and stuff. So to get a word in, we just had to have like private conversations. So bizarre. So very, very quickly we were like, should we just sack this guy off because he's like, we'll just tell him we're not playing anymore. Sam, you've got the books, right? I was like, uh-huh. Yeah, I bought into it. So I started GMing and 4th ed as well, which isn't the easiest to get your head around to begin with. So I was doing that, and as I had a background and I was studying at the time to be a theatre director, I kind of had those like creative tools to like shape scenes and to guide people, to guide actors in a kind of shared improvisation. So we were just doing that, we were having fun and being pirates in my living room, so it was a fun time. But it was only a few years where I was already like, well, this system's all right, but it doesn't quite do what I want. So I'm just going to change this about it, and I'm going to homebrew this about it. And there's such a homebrew mentality in the community, which I think is a real positive about it, where people are able to kind of, it's like a kind of mechanic enthusiast, right? Like just take apart engines and kind of reassemble them and kind of
Totally.
fiddle with stuff, So I think a lot of people already do that. So I'd already tried a kind of fate hack of it. I'd already tried to launch, and we did one event of a live role-playing game that I literally called Spy ! And that had some real silly live role-play mechanics. Like we carried around a freaking boombox with us, and you had a theme tune. And if your theme tune played, then you were invincible, and everyone went in slow motion. And so literally everyone around this, like, airsoft site is just being like, and stuff like this. And people just being awesome and flipping around. It's just like, it's insanity. But it was really great fun. And so I'd always played with the idea, and I'd always been creating little kind of spy genre games because, one, I think, like you said, I think it's quite underrepresented, but very applicable to role-playing. And particularly the kind of role-playing that D&D lends itself to. We are a small team of people with a goal we want to pursue, and we have to murderize lots of things in order to get there. Right? So sure. I think in that sense, from a creative point of view, something like 5e was a great thing to use for it, particularly in this day and age. And like you say, Starfinder, sure, came out. Pathfinder was also a deviation from that, and still publishes under the Open Game license. And even though there was the noughties boom of these like D20 games that then and the bubble completely burst under it, and Spycraft being one of those games, which again I've played and really enjoyed. It was now, or at least last year, I think very underrepresented, and we had an opportunity, I think, both with kind of how the world was going as well, particularly. I think you see a lot more articles now about kind of people worrying about security and the kind of intelligence world as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of games that deal with the tradecraft of spies, right? But of the modern ones, most of them are horror or incredibly light. They're good for one shots, things like that.
Sure.
Grant Howitt has a couple games that would fit into that.
Yeah.
But in terms of like let's call it the Mission Impossible school of spies, right?
Yeah.
Versus the like Get Smart school of spies or something like that. There aren't. I'd say it's been 15, 20 years since there was a major product that was that genre of spy. It's. I think you're right. It's a thing that is underrepresented and is wanted. When you launched that Kickstarter, I was like, "Fuck, that's a really good idea. That's going to make a bunch of money." Do you have like a personal fascination with spies?
I wouldn't call it a fascination.
Okay.
I think it's an appreciation of the genre. I really very casually enjoy watching quite a bit of it. I don't count myself as particularly well read. Like, you know, I could not nail a Bond trivia round in a pub quiz or name you every single Mission Impossible character or
Sure.
anything like that, right? But I just enjoy the genre, and so it's both a toolkit to let you play in it, and it's a kind of a tribute to it a bit, I guess. Yeah, like I'm not a real like spy genre buff. I don't know loads, but I appreciate how it plays out and its kind of dramatic rhythms and
Sure.
stuff like that. You know, I'm not even
So
that clever either. I don't see like twists coming and stuff. So I'm always just like, oh. Uh,
yeah. So then I guess there's not as much connection to the follow up, but I'm still interested to know what is your like 100% IP get? The thing that you're just like you die happy when you make the product. Is there one?
17-year-old me would say The Matrix.
Okay.
Um, but level headed, slightly more commercial brained Sam would say um, something that is not yet in the public domain. Like, love to reach out to a Netflix or an Amazon Prime and go, can we take a cheeky look at what you're developing? And you know, if we see is it Lock and Key
Yeah.
or like uh, or a Westworld? Like,
God,
imagine.
Westworld has been like a thing that I've thought about for a long ass time. That would
I
be a
mean,
great one.
I've literally just started watching it.
It's
Like,
so
I've
good.
just started binging it. I can't believe it was 2016 too. Um, but imagine just being around and kind of having some ins to Sky Atlantic at the time and hearing about that show, because that is a short form RPG where if you don't know necessarily all of the details and all the spoils of it, then man, you're in for a ride.
That's a
Like,
wild campaign to
imagine
explore.
playing imagine playing a host that's discovering themselves. Like,
You think it's
fuck
like
me,
you
right?
think it's Deadlands without the magic, and then it turns out to be a fucking like cyberpunk game,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Like it would be a wild experience. Okay,
yeah.
uh, cool. That would be that. I like the way you think. Um, uh, oh, you know
But
what?
also like Game of Thrones. So
Sure,
obviously,
you have like a
like no shit.
three. You have a stream that's like on season 3, right?
Yeah. So we've been playing a year now.
Okay.
So we it yeah, I was so a few streaming friends I approached about and some of them actually approached other people, and we all then became really good pals over it. Um, I've played the Green Ronin Song of Ice and Fire RPG probably
Okay.
more than any other RPG ever. Um,
Interesting. I don't think I've ever met a person who could claim that.
um, like, and I've run it a lot. I ran about a year long home campaign. I played in a campaign that was on and off from around, I think it was like 2011, 2012 for a couple of years. Which I played a Bravosi playwright, which is just like off the wall
So
concept,
two words that I wouldn't necessarily put next to each other normally. So
right? I wanted to be like Jacobean Bravo. It was great. Um, and so I for all its faults, and I am a believer of that adage that you can love a thing and be critical of it. Like, it's not it's not the best designed game. It's not by any stretch of the imagination a well laid out rule book, but I really enjoy playing the game. I like the D6 mechanic, the roll and keep, where you kind of add bonus dice and you keep the best 4 or 5 dice of the pool. I like how that feels. I've got my head around the mechanics so easily now that I can kind of bash NPCs out in kind of 5 minutes and just be like, yeah, there are that stat, there are that stat, that drive stat is that drive stat is that kind of thing. And then I read the series. I was in a weird position, so I was reading the series in between like a couple of seasons of it when I was still in restaurants, and it was my commute book or my commute books. And I got to a stage where I was getting through them, and I was going to be one book. I think it was probably A Dance with Dragons, actually, or A Dance with Dragons, where I was going to be ahead of the series, but only by I think one series, and then the series would actually take over.
Okay. Yeah, that probably is Dance of Dragons.
Yeah. But then I read through all those. Loved the books as much as, and I'm not a real kind of big reader. It takes very little time for me to get bored with a book. Like I'll be kind of 10 pages in and just be like, nah, And I hold my hands up. I got about halfway through Dune, and I'm just like, I cannot do this.
Wow, that's a big admission.
Yeah, I mean, and I even tried during an 8-hour layover in JFK, coming back from a Gen Con, and I was just like, I can't do this. It's dense, and it's just a personal thing. I think maybe if the characters and the themes just don't meet me, then I'm just like, well, I don't care.
It can be a slog. It can be hard to get through.
Yeah. But thankfully, Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire, really grabbed me as much as the series had did, or the seasons on HBO had. So about a year and a month or so ago, I was reaching out to people and going, I want to stream a Game of Thrones game because I think it'd be really cool. I think we'd get kind of lots of juice out of the drama and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So, we assembled a group, and what I imagined, and I wrote a kind of political plot, and I tend to GM and write my plots by going, okay, this is what would happen if they never got involved. Big bad or group of people would do X, then Y, then Z. And then that allows me, because they've got an agenda and they've got an objective and everything like that, all the cool drama kid stuff that we were taught, years ago, because they've got those kind of real tangible targets. Mm-hmm. When things go awry in the timeline, I can improvise, I can adapt, and I can do stuff, right? So I planned what would be basically a Game of Thrones, and I came out with a Storm of Swords. I came out with a massive, it developed into this massive 2-book bonanza of crazy stuff. Because not only did I have my plot, but the house they created and the fuckery they dealt themselves was like a whole arc in itself. And I've been working the two in tandem. But it's just been really fun. And I think it's been cool because we're basically a table of GMs. Mm-hmm. So
yeah,
there are nights.
I was listening to a few episodes, so I have not slept in about 22 hours. So I'm running on fumes, but it's great.
Yeah,
I love it.
I know what you mean.
And so one of the things I did to kind of power through the night was I started listening to a few episodes of that, and it definitely feels like a table full of jams. It's a lot of people who understand how a game runs and how dramatic arcs function and RPGs playing together.
Yeah.
You've mentioned your theater background a few times, and this is a thing I kind of abstractly knew about you. And I don't mean this to be either a positive or a negative statement, but I would, if somebody said, name the top 10 games that feel like a theater person had creative input in them, right? Games that evince all the things that I learned from my time in theater. I don't think a single Modiphius game would make that list. I think it would probably be a lot of kind of indie games, frankly. And there's definitely constraints of kind of being in the trad market, where there are bridges too far for the general commercial audience. Do
Yeah.
you feel like you've been able to kind of incorporate that background, that understanding of narrative and collaborative storytelling that comes from a theatrical background into either mechanics, or if not mechanics, then kind of the modules that you've been able to oversee? And do you have any like specific examples or like feelings, like a time you feel really proud that you were able to sneak it in there?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I wrote I somewhat adapted, but also wrote the GM chapter for Star Trek Adventures.
Okay.
I adapted it in part from Conan just to get the rough structure, because I hadn't had much writing experience at that point, and so I was like, I just need something to hang this off, and then I can kind of go through there. I hope I injected it in with some kind of dramaturgical help. And we talk a lot in 2D20 now about scenes.
Yeah, you do, and that is like the big thing for me.
Yeah, and stakes, and we talk about that kind of thing, right? So I think it is under the surface, certainly, and it's 2D20 personally for me exists in a kind of a weird parallel. I think it's quite mechanical, in a sense of the actual just the task resolution mechanic. Can be quite gritty for people to get their heads around. You've got to check a number, but you've got to check a number of successes based on a pool of dice. There are already a couple of steps there that maybe kind of quicker games or certainly indie games will have. But the game itself, I feel, can be quite adaptable and quite versatile in how you manage. One of the things, particularly for me, is tension, and that can be quite a mechanical thing, often. So, and particularly, and I think probably this comes from my theatre background and my experience there, probably more than the actual system itself enables people to do this as such, but it is inherent in the system. So if you say to me, well, I want to do this, and I go, cool, it's difficulty 1. You just got to get 1 success. Your target number on a D20 is probably a good 12 or more. If you're playing Star Trek, they're all competent characters. So you're thinking, probability for me to get 1 success on a couple of D20s with a target number of like 12, it's all right. Like, it's a good... It's over 50% at least. There are some charts that we've got internally I know about, but it's actually a good probability there. So you're going to go difficulty 1. That's fine. It's cool. I'll breeze it. So there isn't as much at stake there. But if I say, okay, well, you want to do this, and all of this kind of stuff is ancillary to it as well. This is difficulty 5. Immediately, the tables that I run at conventions, when they've either first getting to grips with the game, or if there's a group, say that I ran the 2D20 for Acton Cthulhu with on Encounter Roleplay for a while, if I said something like that, they were like, oh, bam, right, we need to get momentum in, we need to get assistance in, we need to do this, we need to try and do this other thing. And immediately the stakes and the tension and some of the energy is higher. Just simply by changing up the difficulty. I don't know that exists in a lot of other games. But I think because the methodology is kind of presenting it up front a lot of the time, that's where it comes in.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, the obvious comparison for me is like DC and 5e, right?
Yeah.
DC's hidden. There is a lack of tension when DC's hidden. Simply because the information that the player has to understand the gravity of the situation or the lack thereof is lessened. Having that presented up front is definitely a thing that I could see aiding the ROLE roleplay of the game. So I asked you about IP that you would want that you die for. Is there... I mean, I can't imagine someone dying to work on a system. Maybe some people would die to work for WotC or whatever, but say you get carte blanche, right? Like, again, Achtung Cthulhu came out for 3 systems?
Yeah, they did Call of Cthulhu 6th edition originally.
Yeah.
Savage Worlds. There was a Fate edition.
There was a Fate edition, yeah.
Yeah. And then it got updated to 7th edition Call of Cthulhu as well, fairly recently. PDFs are
Um,
available.
if Chris was like, hey, pick a system, any system, the next thing we're doing is going to be 2d20 and the system you pick. And don't worry about the viability. Don't worry about the. We're testing the waters, and you're our head of product. What do you want to go with? What kind of floats your boat? Do you have something kind of in the back pocket, a system that you find fascinating and wish you could work with?
I think the thing that, and I know it doesn't necessarily translate to what people have seen from our products, but from a personal point of view, the things that grab me are the things that provide a lower barrier to entry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Things where I can draw more people in than just your, like you said, mainstream RPG or audience, or people who've been role playing kind of forever, kind of thing. Um, I think Free League's mechanics, while simple, have always been really elegant. Um, I was absolutely blown away by Alien's stress die mechanic. I was like, that is beautiful.
Yeah.
I have a higher chance of succeeding, but there is also now this kind of critical failure part to it that's added because of that stress.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was just fantastic for me.
It's the best mechanization of adrenaline that I think I've
Yeah,
ever seen.
yeah. So it's always something where, and particularly they're using six-sided dice.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a kind of a household in the land that like probably doesn't have a six-sided dice
Just
somewhere in a drawer.
take a hammer to a boggle set, and you got enough to play an RPG. Like,
Yeah, right. Um, so anything that just enables more people to just go, oh, okay, I recognize this. This isn't. I'm not straying too far outside my comfort zone.
okay, yeah, I feel that. I mean, so like, that's the thing I deal with all the time. My day job is teaching kids games. You don't start with something really hard. Also, I'm a little worried you froze. I think you froze. Well, that's a bummer. To everyone watching, hold on. I'm going to end the call and do another one. Think you dropped from the call. Alright. Sam says he's going to take this opportunity to grab another gin, so we should be back in a minute. Um, Thanks for watching, everybody. Also, I think we're at the point where if you want to ask Sam a question, throw it into chat. Joe on Show interview. Indeed. Cecil's nightmare. There we go.
Hello.
All right.
Back.
Let's.
Sorry.
No worries. I'm just making sure that I have your audio on. Just say anything.
I'm back.
There we go. Ta-da!
I have a new gin.
Lovely.
This may happen again. I have to update my video card driver.
No. Totally fair. I'm gonna say that every time it happens, it's your duty to refill your gin.
That's fair.
All right. Plus, next time I'll take the opportunity to go to the bathroom because I should probably do that.
That's fair.
I have no idea where we were.
We were talking about systems, I think.
Oh yeah. And you would use something with a lower barrier to entry that's kind of lends itself slightly more to narrative roleplay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's about what I figured from a theater kid. So.
Yeah. I think it's just got to fit. You know,
sure.
I think 2D20 is a good fit for Star Trek Adventures.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it's a good fit for the market. Right? Like, I am a notorious 5e dragger. I drag 5e through the dirt.
Sure.
Mostly because even for a trad system, I don't think it does anything quite as well as, like, Free League's narrative dice, or 2D20, or even, like, Genesis, like the story dice that Genesis uses. There are these very good mass market general consumer systems that do a better job. 5e is just a really, really easy sell because it's the most popular game in the world. Everyone knows it.
It's a brand, right? Exactly.
It is our baseline knowledge for the average consumer. But, like, 2D20 is a vastly more narrative system than 5e is. I think I can say that with basically no reservations. I'm not concerned about anyone, like, calling me out on that. Feel like I could substantiate it if they did. Okay, so this is kind of weird. How the hell did you wind up where you are?
I don't know. If I knew, I'd have started with that.
It's fair.
I can tell you the story of how it happened.
That's
how I
awesome. That's
got
good
there.
enough. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's like 90% luck and being there at the time.
Okay.
And probably 10% experience and expertise, I guess. But having thought about it a bit, not just before this interview, but again for probably a year or so, or a couple of years now, like it's not like everything in my life is built up to this moment, but it's like I can see how the education I had and the background I had in the hobby has helped significantly in just kind of keeping me where I am and keeping it up to date and everything. So I basically interviewed to be Chris's PA.
Okay.
And got the job. But so Chris Birch runs the company, created Modiphius out of the Act on Cthulhu Kickstarter. Started the company with his wife. And he was basically pretty much the kind of only point of creative contact for anybody about anything. And it's at that point he just needed somebody to
Yeah, I mean,
hold his calls, I guess.
I have a message on Kickstarter. I was going through my old messages, and it's just from Chris, from the Act Up
Yeah,
Cthulhu thing, because like nobody else was there. It was just like I
yeah,
had a random question. Who's going to answer? The head of the company.
yeah. It was such a small knit team. Um, so yeah, there was an office of about 6 or 7 people on a busy day.
Okay.
When I started. When I started in, oh God, let's think. So 2016, I must have started. Because 2017 we launched Star Trek.
That sounds
That's
right.
right. So the summer of that year, and it was basically, in a way, it set me up well to do what I'm doing now because Chris kind of didn't have anyone else to like segment jobs off to. He did everything. I also did a little bit of everything. So I had a good kind of a broad understanding of how kind of products were made. And also like kind of, I remember one of the kind of first, I'd say kind of, big jobs that I had, just one of the things I had to do for him. There wasn't just can you enable this person to do this? Can you just answer this question or whatever? It was, okay, I need to make these like box sets for this Actung miniatures thing. I need to make these boxes. I need you to source the quotes. You can talk to this person, this person, and do all this kind of stuff. And so I was kind of like left on my own to like, not left on my own, that's the wrong phrase, but like I had to go off myself and figure it all out and then present him with ideas and ask him questions and this kind of stuff before, and quotes and stuff before we actually went ahead and produced the thing. So quite early on in the company, even though I was probably essentially just it was a publishing assistant was the title, but it wasn't even a PA job. It was literally just, can you just help me do things?
Yeah, I mean, it was a
kind
PA
of job.
in a film sense of PA.
Right, okay, yeah.
So you were just kind of a gopher for...
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, pretty much. And then, so it was, we hadn't announced yet, but we're building up to an announcement of Star Trek. And I think it was just happening as I joined that we were actually doing it. But it had already been about 6 months in the making. But it had been initial kind of creative setup. Some of the design for the game had been ongoing, and then the line manager, as they were called back then, but the kind of project manager for it, and basically kind of lead writer, was assembling the group, the writing team and stuff, and they were outlining what it was going to be, or what it's going to look like, the kind of outline for the book. And so I started helping them out, and Nathan, our rules developer, on just keeping things going, more like kind of project management 101. I was doing things for them. I was helping them along. I was checking in. I was making sure things were getting done for Chris. And then unfortunately, the line manager then had other commitments and had to kind of pull out. And it didn't happen very quickly. It was obviously like, as a heads up, I need to move over and stuff, and I need to give this up to somebody. And we didn't really have anybody, so I basically just started covering for him, or like kind of doing what he was doing. So I was liaising with writers, and I was kind of I wasn't that kind of creatively I didn't have a clear creative direction or anything for it. I was just reviewing the kind of manuscripts, I guess, and getting people assignments and making sure that it was kind of what Chris wanted at the time. So I mean, in a way, it's lucky that Star Trek was kind of half the game it is now, I guess, looking back. It just somehow, I think maybe just the expertise on the game, every person's individual expertise just created this one thing out of, rather than kind of one person spearheading a whole project. And so a couple of months in, or a month or so into that, I was essentially just line managing Star Trek and the development of the game. And I was also kind of trying to just kind of not get rid of, but do the things on my desk as well, all the other ancillary things, and just getting them done so that I was doing what Chris needed, but also was helping the project along. And I used to sit basically on the end of of two desks with Chris on one side and then Rob, our head of development, on the other. And I said to Chris, kind of at the end of one day, I was like, okay, and I was kind of building myself up to this a little bit, and I was like, okay, I've basically been line managing Star Trek now for like a month and a half. Can I just line manage Star Trek as my job now? I'd quite like to do that. And his response pretty much verbatim was, okay, well, as long as you can still do all the other stuff I need you to do. And I was like, cool, okay. And then over the course of a few weeks, all the other stuff just started kind of going away. And then I was basically line managing Star Trek. And then for the next few months, it was about beta testing, getting all the drafts in. And he was like, it's got to be at Gen Con. It's got to be at Gen Con. And I was like, fuck, okay, I don't know how quickly these things are meant to come together, but it feels like we might be able to do it. Oh, okay, right. And so it would, I think we worked pretty fast. This is working quickly too, but this maybe is kind of helps people who either watch this or read this hopefully understand a bit of how freaking long these things take. We got drafts in the January. I think first drafts in the January. We had a final draft, so we had revisions done of those probably the kind of month after. And then it was into canon editing, approvals, then actual like editing, copy editing, proofreading and layout and stuff. We're meant to have our stock in our consolidators, not too far up the road, to be honest, in Indianapolis at the time, for Gen Con. We were supposed to have it in by the second week of July, and that was a cut-off. Mm-hmm. If we didn't have it in then, it wasn't getting to Gen Con. It was so close, we weren't going to try it with a sea freight. We air freighted that stock into Gen Con because we absolutely wanted to make sure we had it on the stand or at the booth. But like, even the creative stuff aside, and the great game that I am genuinely very proud of having been a part of making, I think that was like one of my proudest things at the company. Was like, it was one of the first, because Kickstarter is notorious for being very kind of long-lived things. Like, it takes a while for stuff to come out. People underestimate how long it takes, and also sometimes overpromise what they can deliver. And so I was really proud to be like one of the first things to go, no, we said it would be here and it's here. Like, I did that. I made sure that happened. So that was really cool. I was genuinely very proud of that. And then was just absolutely over the moon with the response it had.
I mean, actually, off the back of that success, I get kind of the direction your career at the company moved in.
Yeah, I mean, kind of that was kind of it, In staff reviews and appraisals that I had with Chris, he would always ask, well, what do you want to be doing, or where do you see yourself in however many years or whatever. It's like, well, what would you want to be doing for the company in 6 months or 12 months or something like that? And I think I did say, I want to be basically like running the RPGs from a kind of project management point of view, but also kind of just overseeing them. And that's kind of where I've found myself. And it's so kind of like you kind of saying at the beginning, and you kind of get that humble kind of, oh well, it doesn't feel like I'm like the head of development, but it how you say it, like one of the biggest RPG companies in a thing, in a hobby that I absolutely adore and has been like my hobby, and because of LARP too, partly my business for X number of years. It feels weird and also doesn't quite feel true saying that you're the head of or RPGs or head of product at this big company, because I mean, quite frankly, we have to put the industry in perspective. This industry is the size of a big budget Hollywood movie. It's nothing.
One rich tech could just decide, I own all of analog RPGs.
Yeah.
Other than WotC, right? He probably couldn't afford to buy it from Hasbro. That would be too
No.
expensive. But like
No.
everything other than WotC, you could just do there are
Yeah.
people who could just cut that check.
And that's the thing, right? In terms of revenue and sales, like Wazzy's up fucking here, and like Paizo's probably like here, and everyone else is pissing around in the margins. Like that's where the industry is. And so, like, you know, there are no, like, people aren't getting rich off this fucking job or like have yachts or anything. The company I work for is still a micro entity in legal, like a corporate speak in the UK. It has probably 30 or maybe 40 full-time employees. If you compare that to any other industry, you're talking about like a shop or a t-shirt printers or one thing. But this is, like you say, and I guess you're right. It's a kind of a big deal or a big brand within the RPG sphere.
Yeah, I mean, both can be true, right? You can be You can have the staff of essentially a mid-sized H&M, and like still be probably one of the 5 largest companies in our vertical slice of analog games, right?
Yeah.
Like both of those can be true. Which is wild, right? But it's strange to think of yourself that way. I imagine most people who run companies in this business or like are the head of something that has like major IP deals and large. I don't think like Angus Abramson, who I think used to run Cubicle 7, right? I don't think he probably thought of himself as a big deal. But you got the Lord of the Rings and a few other IPs for a long time. Like, you kind of are a big deal. So, you mentioned this, in the context of Chris asking you, where do you see yourself in 12 months? So, I mean, one, I am interested. Where do you see yourself in, like, 5 years? But also, from the... who fucking knows? Dead in a ditch somewhere because of COVID?
I hope not.
Just, like, they turn Covent Garden into
gas masks
like
and raiders.
Yeah. It's just Buckingham Palace becomes a mass grave. Who knows? Who knows? But like,
no, actually having been at home because of social distancing and that kind of stuff, I actually and writing quite a bit of the day, I actually do hope that in 5 years I am not even necessarily like head of X or whatever it is kind of within a company, but probably working for RPG companies in that respect. And then also doing my own projects on the side. I probably just an evolution of kind of what I'm doing now, but maybe just with a little bit more work-life balance, I guess. That is such a 30s fucking answer, isn't it? Like, that's like 21-year-old me would have been like, fucking reach for the stars, do this, do that.
I want this comfortable position that I have now to continue forever, but get a
just want to earn a bit more money for doing this, a bit lazier. That's it.
There you go. That's the dream. I feel that in my fucking bones. So I guess the second question, which honestly is the one I'm more interested in, no offense, you're an interesting dude, but I love this industry more than I love any one person in it. What do you think is next in like the next 5 years for the business?
I mean, I think, and I reckon that the pandemic as well has vastly exacerbated this. I reckon, though, that on the whole, we're not going to see many friendly local gaming stores, if any, in the next kind of 5 years. I think that retail has been on a bit of life support, or at least wholesale has been on a bit of life support.
Yeah.
And part of the success I've seen Modiphius have is because they also have a direct-to-market revenue stream, which means that you can buy my book from me, and I get a much bigger slice of that pie. It's a lot of what indie publishers will do, and it's a lot of what platforms like Drive Thru RPG will do. And I think that's probably where the industry is headed in the long term. Really, a lot more online play, virtual tabletops, and also I hope that the kind of thick 300 to 400 page tomes that we either have to cart around or read through. I could tell you, I can remember the last roleplay game I read cover to cover, and it was Fate about 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't read 400-page rule books.
No.
I don't have the fucking time anymore. But you give me a Grant Howitt 2-pager, and I'm like, I'll see you tonight,
Tight.
buddy.
Love it.
Right? But I think, hand on heart, I think the community at large needs to get on board with paying a premium like we do now for products that are only 50, 100 pages big. Because what you're paying for really is a rule set that's been developed so that you can then have hours of experience playing. But if you show someone a frickin' a letter-sized hardback in a store and you say that is worth 50 quid, sorry, if this is worth like $65 or something, sure, they go, yes, it is. Mm-hmm. I'll take that off the shelf and I'll go and buy it. But if you give them like a staple, like a saddle stitched little booklet thing that could be the most beautiful little game and play the most elegantly, and you say that is worth $65, they'll go, fuck off.
Yeah.
I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
You know? So I think the market has to, well, I mean, it's not going to, because capitalism, right? Or commercialism. But I think, the community has to come round to the idea of, and maybe it's quite a millennial idea, maybe really, that you're buying the experience over the actual product itself necessarily. Because I mean, they could sell players' guides for like $10 and still make a ton of cash. But they don't, because the market is in, $45 books. So to make 3 of those, that's your buy-in, and now you've paid, and now it's paying the shareholders. So it's a weird economy of scale and stuff.
Do you think that happens though? It's like, I think I completely agree with your prognosis, both of the wider market, what's going to happen, how COVID's exacerbating it. Like, I think companies that have a lot of their revenue tied up in existing distro chains are going to be fucked. It's why I think Paizo is about to collapse, frankly.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a direct consumer that matters. They have one technically. It looks like it's a GeoCities site. It has like no functionality. It's a garbage portal.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to come around to the point where it works out for them. I think friendly local game stores are by and large going to be dead if they don't have a secondary business. I think game cafes are going to be what essentially takes over.
Yeah, I could see that. And it already has. Really.
It already has, right? Like, you make so much more money off the non-retail portion of that business than you do off the retail.
Yeah.
I also think that you're totally right that like the age of the 400-page 8.5 by 11 full-color rulebook it's dead, kind of. It funds a collector's market, not a player's market.
Yeah.
But
I mean, we're all collectors. I think
sure.
that adage of possession is 9/10 of the law. I've always joked that RPG hobby is 9/10 possession.
Agreed.
And 10% fucking play.
Yeah, if you're lucky, 10%.
Yeah.
It's like closer to 1 or 2% for me. But what happens? What happens when that those two things hit, right? When the stores die out and the companies that were tied up in those stores die out, do the remaining companies make the shift to a smaller product footprint? Or do they just keep on going because that's the most comfortable thing to do? Like,
I don't know, honestly.
yeah.
I think it obviously you hear, and I'm not particularly like commercially savvy, but you hear that like it's those kind of middling companies that are squeezed the most. Folks like me who have done a Kickstarter, who have the cash already, we have positive cash flow, so we just got to pay out to make the stuff, and then it's in the market, are going to be fine. They have less invested in what's going on, and unfortunately, that's true. As much as they've had emotional and creative investment in something, they don't have as much cash wrapped up in it.
Yeah,
And
I got
so
fucking everybody's money. I could just make these videos and dip.
yeah, right. I literally went through my Kickstarters today, like the list of things I've backed. Like a dozen of them I've never seen anything of. And I'm just like, oh shit, I gave money to that person
Yeah.
like 3 years
Like
ago.
a
And
$1,000 out on games that have never materialized.
yeah, right. So it's people who put together a PDF off their own back and chuck it up on a platform don't have as much cash invested. Let's call it Hasbro because they won't die.
No, they're going to be fine.
They might just shelve D&D for 5 years,
Yeah.
and then in another 7 they'll go, you know what? Let's bring back D&D.
Yeah.
And they'll put some cash behind it and they'll get it made. But it is unfortunate to say it's the kind of Free League Modiphiuses of the world who will be squeezed possibly the hardest. But I hope at least that those companies will adapt, and the remaining ones will change towards a more direct to consumer approach, whether that's drop shipping through the likes of Amazon or whatever that cyberpunk dystopian company becomes in the next 5-10 years.
It's just going to be called Smile because that's their logo.
It's not even going to be called Smile. It's just going to be the logo. That's all you're going to see. Yeah. But like, so whether it's drop shipping or whether it's having your own warehouse and then shipping from there and that kind of thing. That Modiphius partners with a local warehouse and also then the consolidator we have in the US, but we ship directly out of them, as well as shipping out to we ship to distributors. And see, that's the chain. So we're working with, if you follow it all the way back, and you ignore the actual creative and graphic design and art element of it, in terms of just making something, it's the guy who cuts down the tree, who sells the tree to the paper maker. The paper maker sells it to the printers. And the printer, we buy the stock from. And then we give that to the consolidator, who, when they sell it, takes a cut of our margin. And then the distributor, they sell it to the distributor. Then the distributor sells it to the shop that sells it to you. So there are already like 6 to 8. I don't know. I've had a couple of very strong gins, and I'm not good with maths. There are a good half a dozen steps, in that chain already, as opposed to me buying the thing off the printer, who's bought the paper off the person who chopped down the tree, who sells it to me, and you pay me for it, and I ship it to you.
There you go. You've cut out at least 2 steps.
And we also have a relationship, which is much more like a modern day consumer relationship. People, and particularly, I think, role players and the community at large, want to know who they're backing. It's not like celebrityism, but it's maybe an essence of that, and it's, I think, partly why streamed games have really been popular.
There's a light cult of personality mindset to the hobby?
It's the parasocial relationship we have.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I backed. I bought Acton Cthulhu. That's Chris's game, and you have a bit of that relationship, going on, as opposed to me buying from Amazon. Don't make anything,
Sure.
but I don't know, like
I don't have
a brand, right?
Yeah, I don't have a warm and fuzzy feeling about getting a $7,000 order from Alliance.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? Like that's a transaction. But
Yeah.
like when I buy my friend's game, or like there's a person I look up to because they do good work, and I purchase something from their site, that
Me too.
feels different.
And yeah, and in part because I'm also kind of inside the industry and I know kind of what that's like. And again, I joke with friends about, well, whose turn is it with the RPG Fiver this month? Like, I'll Ko-fi them, or I'll like.
It's the same $20 being passed back
Yeah,
and forth around
I'll
the
throw
industry.
them. I was like, you know what? I asked you a few questions. You consulted for me. Here's $10. Here's $20. Like you spent 5-10 minutes of your time chatting to me or whatever. Here's something. Here's something. Did you just release a thing? Here's your Patreon. Did you just release something?
I gotta Venmo you. I gotta do this at the end.
Like here's here's something for your PDF that you release on Drive Thru RPG. It's pay what you want. You recommended $5. I'm going to give you $10. And it's supporting friends. It's supporting individuals much more now. And I at least I hope in a way. Although it's going to do a couple of things, is I hope that the industry decentralizes a bit more. And I hope that there's more of that $20 to go around for each individual person.
Yeah.
So that Hasbro's not taking $19 and we're all trying to deal the small change out to each other.
Yeah.
I hope that now people can actually make dollars, but on their own things. I think, we may see in probably 5 years or so a big dip in licensed IPs. I don't know. I'm not saying that from any kind of
who knows?
Like whispers in the night, or like insider trading or anything. But like it could be like the D20 bubble burst. But back in the noise, it was all genre games. It wasn't. They didn't make James Bond. They made Spycraft, right? Like I'm making the Spy game. It's not one particular thing, but it's based off of a lot of Mission Impossible, some Atomic Blonde, some Bond, some pulling on everything, right? We may see that in the next kind of 5 years or so, where it goes back to genres, or it goes back to maybe more the focus stuff. Like if you want a game that deals with language, here's Dialect or something like that. So a very kind of curated, focused experience might be something that we go much more towards.
I personally would love that. And for what it's worth, even if we don't, as an interested observer who follows the market closely, right? My money, if I were to put money down on 3 companies that survive and thrive because their competition ends up being obliterated, I'd put Modiphius as one of them.
I think it's got enough of a robust revenue stream. And this is speaking a little bit from proper experience and kind of insider knowledge, that we were able to weather the storm because there is that direct consumer relationship.
Yeah.
Even digitally at the moment, only digitally, because our consolidators have obviously shut up shop like most, right? That we're able to keep going. And we've had to consolidate a fair bit. Personally speaking, I'm on furlough, and a lot of staff are. But we can do that, and Chris can contract the business and oversee things himself, because not intentionally, but we've got that support structure made, not necessarily for him, but for the company.
It's everyone's a survivable business model.
It's survivable, yeah. And because you get more of a cut for either digital goods, which don't have a production outlay as well. You're only looking at fixed costs there. Your actual development and writing and art time, that we're able to do that. And then once warehouses and distribution and stuff gets back up and running, that revenue stream will kick back up again for a while. And we'll have to see how it pans out, obviously. But particularly the direct to customer relationship, you go on the Modiphius.net site and you buy something, that's coming straight out of our warehouse.
Yeah.
And so that will help us weather the storm a whole lot better, I think, than, like you say, companies. I didn't necessarily know that too much about Paizo, but the kind of companies that will rely on distributors, will probably get hit the hardest.
There are unfortunately a good number of companies that people think of as like really, really financially healthy and well off that I think are very, very badly positioned given what's going on.
But those companies they're cash flow businesses.
Sure.
And they're a couple of months away from not being a company anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
And you're tied up in distro chains and traditional outlets, and that shit shuts down. There's your couple months of capital that normally keeps the lights on, and it's just burned through.
Yeah. It's actually, I think, been very savvy. Chris has been very savvy in terms of Modiphius, that the capital he essentially got from Kickstarters that he made and is delivering on now, they didn't get piddled away or mismanaged. So there is a bit of
there's
revenue
like a war
still.
Chest. Yeah.
There's a little war chest in the corner that we can still call on, which he's been very good in managing. I think.
Very glad to hear it. All right, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We've been going for an hour 40, which is the longest interview I've done yet. But also, I feel like I could do this for a while longer.
Well, I'm here, man. I in a weird way expected a couple of hours, if not 3. Like this is an RPG session.
That's fair. That's true.
3-hour RPG session. I'm honestly here if you are for it.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm gonna give you control. You can say whatever the hell you want. You could just like swear and get me banned. Just whatever. I don't care. But I'll be back in a minute.
Sure. I'll take questions from chat. There are 5 people watching. I don't know if anyone's there. One of them's me. One of them's Joe. 2 of them, 3, 4 of them are people I know. So it's all just family, apparently. Okay. There is always the VOD. I can't, unfortunately, take questions from VOD because I won't be here actually on stream to answer them, is the problem. What was my theatre experience growing up? I was a proper theatre kid, so I was, Jesus Christ. I got into theatre because my dad wrote school plays for my primary school, my elementary school, wherever you're from. And I was backstage one evening before one of his, and I was quite young as well. Like I wasn't one of the actual performers. And there was such a buzz backstage. I was just like, oh my God, this is so cool. I want to do this. So I started like writing my own dumb scripts on a typewriter that we had when I was really young in like the sticks in England. And then in high school, luckily my kind of form tutor, or my kind of main tutor, I guess, was also the head of drama. So I was angling to get into a drama group and studied it in high school. And then I just kept going with it. It was still a chosen subject of mine until I went to university, where I studied at Rose Bruford Drama School. And I knew I wanted to direct rather than to act, so I went to do that. So I had a very small class in my year of about 5 people. about 5 people. It was actually 5 people. And yeah, that was down here in London, and I've stayed here ever since. So, and of course, the real world hit. So I went and worked in bars and restaurants. I'm taking questions from chat.
Awesome. Keep
Someone asked
going.
about my theatre background, so you'll get to rewatch that
I don't have to do any fucking work if they're asking the questions.
Done.
That's great.
Yeah. So I stayed in London. Unfortunately, I graduated in 2009, so straight after the credit crunch, which meant that I was a young, poor graduate who was like, oh, I need a job to stay independent, so I'm just going to find whatever the fuck I can do. I did like 2 months as a postal delivery man, like as a contractor, not even as actual Royal Mail, for like a Christmas. I don't think it was actually Christmas. I think it was just building up to it, or it was just after or something. But that was fucking miserable, and I literally broke my knees. I have the knees of like a 60-year-old now because of that amount of walking I had to do, and it was just a nightmare. And then I went into pubs. So I've done years of bar work. I did a few years of waiting tables as well, which isn't a great industry.
That's my night job.
There we go. Right.
Fun times.
You know, it's the thing that honestly, and you know, this is maybe the gender talking a little bit. It is the thing that kind of gets my back a little bit when we talk about pay rates in the industry. And I know they're not great, but I have worked theatre and hospitality in places where you are treated like shit, or you're doing it for pure passion and you get paid fuck all. But everyone is getting paid fuck all. Whereas I know the rates that we pay people for the amount of work we expect to return is a fair wage. And particularly for people who, and it is an industry, like we say, it's the size of a big budget movie. Mm-hmm. You know, no one, you know, Chris does not have a fucking yacht in Scotland or something. Like, or, you know, he's not like flying to here, there, and fucking everywhere every month. Like, he's not rich. And I don't get paid amazingly well. So yes, we can do a lot better in terms of freelancer pay rates and stuff. There's a lot of talk about word rates and this, that, and the other. But for the calculations I've done in my head, and the rates that people pay, it's a good rate, I think. I don't mind going on record as saying that, because
it's good, because you just did.
There we go. Right.
But also, I'm with you. I think we can do a lot better. I think a lot of companies don't yet pay a fair rate. But also, I get paid fucking pennies, and I dip into my credit card bill every single month to pay my rent.
Yeah.
And when I get RPG products, like editing work, basic shit, not great at word rate, that's like significantly more money per hour than I normally get.
It's a tricky one with that, right? Because obviously we, you know, from our side of things, we pay a word rate. So we'll pay a couple of cents for editing or something. We'll pay anywhere from kind of 5 to 8 for cents a word for writing. And that kind of puts the onus on the freelancer to be as speedy or not as they can be. Where it comes from, I think, is a budgetary thing. You know, the margins on these are not huge compared to other products or other industries, say. So when you're budgeting out your book, you're thinking of everyone. Whereas there was often an emphasis, I feel, on writers' pay within the community.
Well, they're the most obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So, you know, you want to pay X amount, X cents a word for this person. Okay. So you want, and I've seen people do this and not come out the other end okay. You want to pay your writers this much. Okay, cool. How much do you want to pay your editors? Okay, that's a very good rate. Okay. How much do you want to pay your... Let's try and think of the whole shebang.
Layout.
If you're the project manager, you're doing your own thing, but sure. you want money out at the end of this because you also want to get paid for what you do, right? So you've got a project manager over everything else. Writers, how much are you going to pay your editors? If you're working with a licensed IP, how much are you going to pay your canon checkers or your canon editors? How much are you going to pay your artists? How much are you going to pay your layout people? How much are you going to pay your proofreaders? Let's think if there's anything else, because sometimes there is, I'm sure. But it's like all of those things then add up. And if you pay everyone over and above the odds because you value them on in an individual basis, and this is the basis of project management, is you go, oh, so now I as a project manager, say if I've done a Kickstarter, if I've not budgeted properly, oh, now I am paying out of my own pocket to create this product. Shit, okay. And I think, I'm not here to say you should do one or the other. If you artistically want this thing to exist and you are willing to do that, I'm not going to stop you at all. But the way that you are sustainable as a creator or as a company is by making a profit and then reinvesting and then being able to pay people who work for you and yourself. And so you have to make profit. And so you have to budget to a point where, okay, well, this rate's not great. And yeah, in a different industry or a different scale of economy, this would be really terrible. But we're making a role-playing game that may sell, at the lower end, 3,000 to 4,000 copies, like in its lifetime of say one Kickstarter. That is a dream for the Spy game. And we had I think it was about 1,600 people. Or possibly not even that, actually. Can't remember now.
It was a strong showing for what it was.
Yeah, sure.
So just a quick aside. Hearing all of that, where on your body do you think 21-year-old Sam would first attack you?
Probably my face.
Yeah, just punch you right in the face.
Shove me on the doll where he just punch me in the big fat nose. Yeah, for sure.
All right.
For sure.
Just it's good. It could have been anywhere. Could have been a sucker punch to the nuts. You never know. But it's good. Good. A face shot after hearing all of that. It's a good sign.
Yeah. For sure.
No, you're not wrong, right? Like I have to deal. Like I'm dealing with fucking contracts and like models for dealing with fucking bankers and going back and forth with various people on all sorts of shit. Like that's what I do, just making sure that the money fucking works out. And then at night I give people food in a movie theater. So I got a little bit of both. Yeah. But like I get it. You're not wrong. It's just I think there is there's an idealism.
Yeah, I honestly think so.
Yeah, to the discourse that I think finds the way a business needs to operate in the system that we live under so fundamentally distasteful that even being reminded of it is like anathema to their well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think this should be something that we abandon. Like, it's but I would rather see it as an aspiration than this kind of must
like a
demand
moral stricture
kind of because there is a reality to this kind of thing. I think if like right back in the day, if Modiphius had paid over and above what they could, I wouldn't be sat here right now talking to you. And it's just like I said, the reality of the situation. And you have to weigh that up. But I'm also a big believer in voting with your feet. If you don't agree with something a company does or an individual does, don't
Just
buy their
fucking do it.
products.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to cancel them, but just don't fucking buy their stuff.
Yeah. I mean, hey,
Or,
don't get me wrong. There are people out there who deserve to be canceled. I ain't gonna say, but like, my bar is a little different, right? Like,
same.
don't let people play or run or stock my frog, because Varg is a murderer and a white nationalist.
Right.
There you go. That's a bar. Don't
It is.
Don't play, run, or stock ACKS, because that dude was literally Milo Yiannopoulos' lawyer. He's a bad dude. There's a bar, right? A company that pays 2 cents less per word than what you think is fair is not on the same level as a murdering white nationalist. And we need to like recognize that there's a difference in sin, right? Not all sins are equal. And I think we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, just a bit of common sense,
Yeah.
and a bit of, like you say, scale is all we need in some of the discourse, basically. But yeah, I feel a bit Danger Will Robinson right now.
That's good. That's good.
That's
what I want.
Else.
That's the point. If you're not feeling like you might overstep and get dragged, I'm not doing my job right.
That's fair.
But fair enough. We can take a break. We can get you a little more hammered before we go back into some really heavy shit. What do you run for your friends?
Game of Thrones, I told you.
Yeah, but like not on stream. Like, do you have a home game that's just for you?
I did. I ran Star Trek Adventures for a while.
Okay.
It's luckily been a game that I really love running as well as having worked on. So I ran that for a while, and I did something that I'd taken into more of my work that I think has been a real boon, particularly when it's come to like adventure writing and stuff. In the I would get like first drafts in for a Star Trek mission or an adventure, and then with the Saturday, the kind of Saturday home group, I'd be like, right, we're playing this. We're going to give it a go. And then I'm like writing notes and kind of writing what they did, not as a kind of this is what every group's going to do, but in a kind of, oh, okay, well they wanted to know more about this, and there was nothing in the adventure. It's maybe we should think about, because players are going to inquire about this thing or something. So it was a really good point at which to actually playtest something, because at least I got a much better understanding of how, like, where some of the pitfalls were and where we could like bring up the writing and the playability of adventures, compared to say doing it in like more of a kind of what you might consider like a beta period. So maybe when you've had the final draft and you're in editing or something, so it's not tweaking it, but you're still at the creative point where you can like kind of change things around and remix things. And I feel that actually that's where, and like you asked earlier about it, where you think you've injected kind of more of your kind of theatre stuff. I think adventure, structure, and writing has been the main place where I've been able to put that in, because, while I'm not kind of, I think, very well academically read on that kind of thing, about dramaturgy and structure and story arcs and stuff like that, I kind of feel it, and I can kind of discern where it's not working. So I've been able to do that a lot with the adventures we have. So I was able to implement quite a cool structure, or quite an obvious structure, but nonetheless, for Star Trek Adventures, we're like, okay, we're going to do a basic 3-act structure, because really that's how I see role-playing game adventures being played.
You're not like a Brechtian when it comes to
Brecht and Stav and Stan were very close by the end. You have no idea. But it was like, we're just going to do a basic like 3-act thing. So, Act 1, you're learning about what the issue is, right? And you're figuring out how you might be able to do it. Act 2, there's a build-in tension. Things get worse. You're okay. Now you start to try and do what you need to do to get everything going. Okay, and then Act 3 is this big spike, lots of action, denouement, release the tension into something and into a conclusion. And that was basically how I was like, right, this is how we should be structuring things for Star Trek Adventures, and kind of following a little bit from the episodes of the different series and stuff, as well as some basics of what I knew about that kind of dramaturgical stuff. Was able to do that, and I think they've been good and very well produced because of that. And I have quite a kind of bugbear about the way that campaigns and adventures are written a lot of the time. I've come across big campaign books where I've just been like, I have no fucking idea what's going on. And that's bad as a GM. Like, the GM needs to know explicitly exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. Even if it's the overarching thing, so that they can improvise.
Yeah.
So I always say, whenever I feedback or whenever I brief people, I always say to people, I want you to write a 500-word synopsis, max, like 200 preferably, and it needs to tell me everything I need to know as a GM in order to run that adventure. Mm-hmm. So, even if it's a campaign, if I can read that first page at a convention and go, right, here we go.
Yeah, I mean, I can read the intro to Ravenloft. It's not a small book. And by the end of the first, 2 pages, I know everything on a fundamental level that I need to know to run the entirety of Ravenloft.
Yeah.
Where did we lose that?
I don't know, and I don't see a lot of adventure modules or campaigns doing it.
They exist, but they're on the margins.
Sure, but that's how the fuck. I don't like you're as a GM. I've read campaigns where they're treating me like a reader or a player, and I'm not that. I am the facilitator of this game. I need to know what's going on. Don't write me a scene that reads like something out of a novel where I'm discovering as the players discover. No, I'm meant to show the players what's going on.
Yeah, give me 2-line descriptions of rooms with pertinent details so that when I blank on something, I can look at the page and I got it, right?
Page 1, sentence 1. X wants to kill Y, and the players are gonna help them. Yeah. Boom! I can run this adventure.
Yeah, I don't know when it. Early aughts.
Yeah, maybe
3.5. I think sometime around then is probably when shit started shifting.
Like we've already covered, when you've got to sell 300-page tomes to people for $50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you look at the difference between Tomb of Horrors and Return to the Tomb of Horrors, right? I'm not going to say Tomb of Horrors is good, but I think it's fascinating. But I would never run it. But the presentation and info design of the original Tomb of Horrors versus Return to the Tomb of Horrors, which is a 400-page book, where I'm like, this is just a tomb. I don't need this much narrative backstory. There's a lich inside of it. Cool. I'm good. I can do the rest. Is there anyone you look up to in terms of good module writing? If you were to beyond the work you do yourself, if someone was like, hey, where do I start? Nope.
I'm just not well read at all in that regard. I'm coming at it from my own instincts, and that's the thing. I'm not I can't even you're naming shit, and I'm like, I know what that is. Never played it, never looked at it, never. You know what I mean? I am terrible in that sense.
No, I mean
But
that only makes it more impressive, honestly.
I just have an instinct for it, I guess. And it's come from a bit of drama school training, I guess, and it's come from just a bit of running games for a while. And I think it can be very hard for people. It can even be hard for myself to know what people need to know when you're writing that kind of thing. It takes someone
Totally.
to have a different pair of eyes and go, I read this paragraph and I'm sorry, I have no idea what you're trying to tell me. Like, what's the subject of your paragraph? And what is it's back to basic stuff. But I find myself writing this stuff in the like today and for the last few days, and last week for some of the GM advice. And I feel like I'm writing for kindergartners because I'm like,
that's my trick.
I'm like, this is basic shit. Why am I writing this? And then I'm like, no, but if I actually think about it, someone might not know this.
Yeah.
Brilliant thing. So a thing again, fucking drama school. I heard this from a tutor, and it has stayed with me. You may have heard this saying, like, someone goes to Picasso after in his late years, and they go, you paint like a 4-year-old,
mm-hmm.
and he says, yes, but it took me 50 years to learn to paint like a 4-year-old.
Yep.
And so there are people who just get it, and there are some people who it takes practice and practice and practice to finally have that epiphany moment of going, oh, of course. And I'm not preaching from some fucking high tower or some high horse.
No. I get it. I'm not tooting my own horn when I say I am one of the probably most well-read people in this business.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable making that claim.
Across.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
I'm fairly comfortable making that claim. That has helped me 0% when it comes to figuring out how info design should work. What really helped? Running games for elementary school children.
Yeah.
That helped.
Yeah.
Right? I have read a dozen plus books on dramaturgy. Same amount on graphic design and info presentation. 50 plus books on games, game theory, game design.
Yeah.
That's all useless. I love it. It's fascinating. It hasn't told me a goddamn thing. Running games for elementary school kids and thinking okay, how do I describe this swamp in a way that they care about, but also that they understand?
How do I spotlight the important things? How do I frame their decisions? Everything comes, and if you really dig into it, like anything, there is an art and a science to how you put those things together. How do I frame narratively through description the choices I have for the player in this scene? Or how do I flag to them what is important in this scene? Because you can write an entire page of beautiful description of how the candle tallow smelled.
I don't want to run Proust.
But if there's a lich at the other end of the fucking room,
yeah,
and you've not talked about them,
what are you even
doing? Yeah,
right? I'm not here to read Ulysses in a fantasy setting.
No.
Or Swan's Way or whatever, right? I'm here to read The Dummy's Guide to Fantasy. That's what I need.
What I tend to lean back on is that kind of experience of what acting and directing kind of is. And it's about trying to understand the kind of immediacy of human instinct and experience and translating that into a performance. So what I'll often do, particularly with NPCs, is I will just try and put myself behind their eyes and think, what are they noticing first? What is their intention? What's their target or objective right now? Kind of, and therefore I feel like I can actually more comfortably sit back and navigate a scene. Or description might be, there's a drama exercise out there which is about entering a room. And it's not necessarily about demonstrating, but it is actually about inhabiting that feeling. And so you can get an actor or a student, whatever you're doing, you get them to walk out the room. And you fuck with the room, you move furniture around, you have people in handstands, you do sorts of weird shit. And then you get them to walk in, and then they live through an experience of discovering something. Mm-hmm. And before that, preferably, because I've done this in the wrong order, you get them to leave the room, and you go, okay, walk in like you're entering a new room. Mm-hmm. And they'll just walk in and they'll look at the first person or whatever their kind of, scene thing is, mm-hmm. and they'll just be like, oh, hello, I'll start acting. Whereas no one walks into a room like that. You walk into a room, what's the first thing you do? You look around to see what's in the room. Mm-hmm. Because you're like, okay, what's here? It's a natural instinct because you want to know primarily about any danger, and then secondarily about what you expect to find there. And the evolution of that exercise then is walking into the room and you've walked into the wrong room. So you walk in, and obviously the bad version of that is you walk in and just go, oh, I'm terribly sorry I've walked in here, and then you leave. But the discovery of having walked into the wrong room is not there. Mm-hmm. So you need... And so what I think when you really drill down to it, a lot of when you're opening that exposition and framing that scene, you need to be thinking from that perspective of, okay, the character that I'm talking about is going to experience it through their eyes, not through a film lens, not through a bit of prose. The whole point of role-playing is that you inhabit somebody and you experience it through their eyes. So you talk about what they feel, and often, so when doing like waking scenes, I'll talk about often what they feel before what they see or hear. Mm-hmm. I think I even tried to look at one point what the first sense was to come back to you when you woke up. It might be hearing or something, weirdly. Rather than a good conscious understanding of touch and everything else like that. But I'm sure sight is the last one.
Interesting.
Because like you get a sense of yourself before you actually open your eyes and see what else is there.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like I always lean back on that, on what character focused stuff rather than like big prose of exposition. Like I'm not a fantastic writer.
Sure. I mean, the way I think of it is like this is a book that was about video game development, but it's frankly fine for probably all game development. But
yeah.
Jesse Schell, who's like a games academic, has a book all about kind of like lenses is the big term.
Sure.
And I think I don't want to say that it's wrong to approach role-playing games with a filmic lens or a literary lens. I think there are games that function on those levels, right? Like
absolutely,
a very tight, compact game can operate through a filmic lens very well. But if we're talking about kind of the archetypal role-play experience, inhabiting a character, going on an adventure, that sort of thing. It's not a filmic lens. It's not a literary lens. It is, an experiential lens. It's a lens of, as you said, inhabiting, right? Not observing. And I don't know if it's just that people who write modules or even write whole games, they're not thinking about it. I often wonder if it's just people like their own stories more than they like creating frameworks for other people's stories.
Possibly. I guess I'm just a weirdo because I like the latter.
Yeah. No, same. I don't give a shit about my own stories. Yeah. I get bored with my own stories before they even finish.
I've often worried, particularly with the show you've been watching of Hours After the Fire, where I feel like I'm not prepared enough or I haven't written enough. But what I keep reminding myself and having to remind myself is but one half of this is missing, and it can only be whole on Thursday. You know, I need the other people here in order to make this happen. So I can set up all of the given circumstances of the scene or of the plot or of the place that they're in. I can do all of that prep work. So I think there is good prep for a GM, and I do think there is bad prep for a GM. And that kind of setup, creating a framework and a foundation to build on, is good. So it's knowing what your NPCs want and what they're up to, knowing what the situation has in store, everything from the weather to what the social political situation is, all of that stuff. But none of that is the complete thing. It's like you are laying the foundation for then someone to come in and like build the house with you. And only through that collaborative experience can you actually get the true part of that. And I've never found being stuck alone trying to create something purely myself has ever, for myself at least, been fruitful in that sense. It's always been in collaboration with other people that I feel like I've done my best, and that we've done our best to create this play game, streamed role-playing game, whatever it is, you know. So in that sense, I rely on other people, but in a positive way, you know. And that's what role-playing games, to think back a bit to where we're heading, the industry and such. That, you know, D&D is still such a war game that people focus on what class are you, what level are you, what features have you got, what can you do?
What is the real verb of D&D? It's killing.
Yes, is yeah. That's the gameplay loop, isn't it? Adventuring is
it's literally
delve, kill, loot, get better stuff, move on.
I mean, advancement is tied to murder.
Yeah.
It's like this is like a real observable change from the time that D&D had advancement tied to loot, right? So being peaceful and getting money used to advance you. It doesn't anymore.
Yeah,
you get nothing. You just get money. You don't have to actually level up from it. You have to kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's... sorry, I interrupted you, but I hope what you were going to say next is that the evolution of where we're going is we're going to be moving away from that as a framework.
And that's partly why I love the Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game, is that it has a conspiratory intrigue subsystem of equal weight to combat and then an equal of weight to warfare. They are different strands of this whole thing, where you have not only do you have like an AC, like a combat defense, you have an intrigue defense. How well suited are you in yourself to suffering people's influence? And then you have your own composure, which is essentially your hit points. So it's still very mechanical in that sense, and it's still rooted in that origination from wargaming. But now we're talking about trying to influence each other with an argument rather than killing people.
Yeah, it's
and like I play role playing games now with pure intent to try and not kill anybody. And I've sat at tables of murder hobos and absolutely loathed it. And I've sat at tables where, you know, After the Fire has had its fair share of NPC and player character death, but it has always felt dramatically right at the time. There have been a couple of surprises along the way, but, you know, they have weight to them. But if I kill 12 goblins in a dungeon, I don't give a shit about the 12 goblins.
Yeah.
But, you know, key characters have died in our campaign, and they've had weight, and that's felt right for Game of Thrones because that's how it treats its main character death. But mostly we're here talking, not rolling as much, and we're on the whole trying to keep people alive, but we're still trying to win the game. Um, that's what I most enjoy. Actually, you know what? An answer to your question about what system I would like to do or whatnot. Actually, um, I would love, and I am low key trying to do this. I want to try and write a game without numbers. I
I
want to
can
try and make.
I can
I want to
send
try
you
and
some
make a game.
reference material if you're interested
That
in
would
how it's been
that would be
done.
amazing.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. I just want to write a game without numbers because we are so like mathematically led, and obviously it's come from dice rolling and again wargaming as the birthplace. But the kind of maths element of it almost detracts from the drama and the story from a lot of time if you're focusing on that as a mechanic as opposed to more of the game as opposed to the role playing part. But if I get to do something, or if I get some kind of advantage to this exchange we're having because I'm charismatic, or if I'm magnanimous, or if I'm cruel, or if I'm whatever it is, it's descriptive. It's something that I know that I am or I do that provides me that advantage rather than my proficiency bonus.
Yeah.
If I say proficiency bonus to someone off who reads novels or watches TV or something off the street,
I'm gonna
they'd be
punch
like,
you in
"What
the
the fuck?
stomach, take your lunch money, and shove you in a locker."
Yeah, what the fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah. There are some very interesting examples. I will send you them.
That'd be amazing.
I collect this shit for a reason, and it's basically to provide reference material when people are interested. That's it. That's just
awesome.
Personal lending library.
Yeah.
All right, we're at 222.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say let's go to 230.
Sure.
Which will put us at about 70 minutes longer than the next longest interview.
Boom.
There you go. So, last 8 minutes.
What's that one thing you really want to ask that I will not answer? Go on.
It's a very good question. What do I want to ask that you're not going to answer? What IP are you currently working on that you think you should shelve?
I think we should shelve. Oof. I don't think we should shelve it, but we genuinely, when Dune came up, were originally we had a round office discussion almost. Where Chris was like, we could, but should we? And as a whole, we were like, no, actually, we don't think we should.
Why?
And then I can't even remember. I think it was probably the uncertainty of how the film might go, which we still don't know.
Sure.
It was maybe the legacy of the IP too, where people had obviously tried to adapt it in the past, and either like the David Lynch film or the film Jodorowsky that didn't get made. It has not been the easiest IP probably for people to work with because of the material itself, probably. Yeah, I think that was about it, probably. I mean, I essentially kind of, on the whole, I don't mind what we work on. I tend to look at things now, because of my role as head of product, more pragmatically, as okay, well, what's the time scale, what budget are we looking at, what's the forecast look like, and this kind of stuff. It's now more businessy than it was when I was working on Star Trek, which
Sure.
I had a passion for, as well as being something that I just wanted to see actually kind of get to market, rather than going, no, it's got to be like this. We've got to do it this way. We had creatives who were driving that anyway. So,
All right, I got one. I got one.
oh, okay,
You walk into a bar.
sure.
You see someone. You immediately walk up to them and punch them in the head. Who are they?
Aside from the obvious political
Yeah, aside.
one,
Yeah, aside from the obvious political.
I don't know. I don't know.
Come on, you don't have any. You don't have any like genuine enemies.
Genuine enemies.
You feel like you're a guy who's got like one or two in your pocket.
There's an old boss I used to work for at a bar that, in the end, treated me pretty badly, and I had to hot tail out of there pretty quick. I'm not a very violent person by nature, anyway.
That's fair. I buy that. You're a theater kid.
Yeah, I think I'm actually quite cowardly in a way.
Yeah.
But and he was a lot bigger than me back in the day. But yeah, I give him a slap.
All right. I'll
Yeah.
take it. That's acceptable.
Yeah. If ever I have stress dreams, it's no longer about going on stage not knowing lines. It's about working at that bar.
Fuck. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
It was
bad.
pretty bad by the end. Yeah, they tried to pin some stuff on me, and I was just like, "Fuck off, see you later."
Yeah. Jesus Christ. All right. When your stress dreams for years after are about an old job, it was bad.
Literally. But it is, everyone has those stress dreams, but it's also like for hospo people as well. It's the nightmare shift that never ends. It's like you're super busy, the kitchen's backed up, stuff's going out of stock, customers are unhappy, and it's just like from all angles. I've worked through some of those shifts.
Me too, and I've had those nightmares. Yeah. Oh yeah. God, I don't know what else. The problem with going so long is that you've discussed fucking everything that I actually wanted to ask. Like this was fairly exhaustive for me. I don't
Joe,
know.
if you could create any role playing game, first IP, and then secondly, either system or kind of whatever else, what would it be?
All right. Do I have to make it, or am I just saying it now exists? Am I magicking it?
For the purpose of this hypothetical exercise, it exists.
It just
I would be interested
exists.
to know what I'd interested to know what you could work on.
Okay.
What you would work on. But yeah, okay. So part one. What role playing games do you want to see just out there? So that's as a consumer. And then secondly, what one would you want to make?
Wow, Mary just fucking nailed it in chat. The answer actually is Courage the Cowardly Dog. The Cartoon Network cartoon. That's actually 100% the answer.
Oh shit, okay, right.
That's really good guess, Mary. That's the IP, for sure.
Okay.
It's incredible. It would be an unbelievably surreal role-playing experience that would be hilarious every single time.
I could not make that game.
Yeah, no, I don't know who could.
No, but that's just not my wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's like if
that's a bit of a Grant Howitt, isn't it? Right?
A little bit, yeah. I think Grant and it's got to be someone else. Grant and maybe like my friend Cecil. How? I feel like they together could make that game, maybe. But still, it's a hard sell. Anyway, that's the Magic version. I don't expect to ever see that game in my lifetime. What would I work on? An IP that I'd work on. Dave Wong's trilogy of books. So, like, John dies at the end. This book is full of spiders. And I'm forgetting the name of the third. They're, like, surrealist comedy horror.
Okay.
That takes place in a small town. I think I could work on that happily.
Nice.
And then system.
if you like small town horror,
Mhm.
you should check out a friend of mine, Jonathan Fry's game on Encounter Roleplay on a Friday. The Haunting of Seawall Orphanage,
Okay.
where he's created a little system that, because of the nature of streaming and his streaming stuff, um, he's mechanically given himself a time limit.
Okay.
So there's a trigger, I think, with some of the roles where if something happens, he then has like this is the last scene, or this is the last thing that will happen this session. So there's a natural closer to it.
I like it.
Yeah, but check it out because it's we might use it for another thing. It looks like a very cool little system.
Um, Cthulhu Dark, I
Okay.
think, is my answer. Graham Walmsley is like very rules light narrative investigative horror system, but I
Right.
want
Yeah.
to use it for something like. Did you ever see the Robin Williams Al Pacino film Insomnia?
No, I don't think I have.
I'm trying to think if there's anything like real cat and mouse serial killer horror.
Ooh.
Like really ratchet up the tension and used Cthulhu Dark for that. I think would
Yeah.
be the system that I'd want to use. Um, I like horror roleplay.
There's a big trend for it at the moment as
There
well.
is. I
In the
mean,
last year or so.
there kind of always is under the surface. Like, I
Yeah.
can't think of a time when there wasn't something horrific in some area of the hobby.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, Mary, Hannibal the series esque, but maybe a little bit darker, but with Cthulhu Dark. Um, but yeah, I mean, I do think horror roleplay has picked up a little bit. I think parasocial play and streaming has definitely helped that.
Yeah.
But also, like, for do you do you deal much with international markets other than North America and Western Europe?
Not a massive amount. We
Okay.
tend to we tend to localize as well, so we'll have other language partners who will translate for us.
Okay. So, Japan's top selling system is and has been for years Call of Cthulhu.
It is. I
Yeah.
did know that. Yeah.
Korea also is huge into horror roleplay.
Yeah.
China slightly less so. I think it's their third. China's
So,
weird because I think Fate is their first.
well, yeah, fair.
I think Fate is the most popular game in China,
Well,
which is wild.
Japanese horror, I think, blows Western horror just out the fucking water completely.
It can. It can. I mean, this is a deep discussion. I'm a person
Sure.
who has feelings on horror.
Okay.
Japanese horror blows like slasher horror of the 1980s out of the water for sure. But like, does it blow like Italian horror of the 1960s and 70s out of the water?
You're speaking way above my Redditness now.
Get a subscription to Shudder. It's a great streaming service that's just horror. Though I don't know. Do you like horror?
I studied it when I was doing like an A level in media studies, one of my
Okay.
subjects, when I was like 17, 18. And I enjoyed studying it. I haven't watched much since.
Well, you've missed a
But
very good decade in art house horror.
yeah, fair, fair. But yeah, I did really enjoy it, and I have some surface feelings and some surface observations that you might expect from a a high school student that studied it a bit. Yeah, but
Well, if you're
that's
ever
where
looking,
the Japanese comment came from.
it's fair. I mean, given when you studied it, it 100% fits. That was like
Sure.
the height of Japanese horror in the international market. If you ever want horror Rex, let me know.
All right,
I'll get you those games that don't use dice and some horror Rex to go along with it.
sweet.
I don't know. That's about it. This has been fun. This has been good. This has been a hell of a lot
Yeah.
more than I expected. Thank you.
I drank less gin than I thought I would.
That's yeah. It's hard to push people to drink more when you're not actually with them. It's just kind of creepy. it feels a little lecherous. I want to
Yeah.
say is the word. Just like, hey, baby, drink up. And I
Come
don't
on,
want to
come
be
on,
that
come on.
guy.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a creepy frat bro on an interview. Uh, so you drank an amount that you seemed to be comfortable with, and we had a good conversation. I'm gonna call this a win.
Fair.
Um, but yeah, this has been a great time, dude.
Awesome.
If
Thanks, man.
uh, if the world doesn't end, I assume UK Games Expo is gonna get rescheduled. And
I think they've already like rescheduled it,
have
but we'll
they?
see how things pan out.
Okay,
Yeah, I have to check. I don't honestly
I
know.
haven't fucking looked. I mean, I don't think Gen Con has yet. Um, so that's we'll fucking see. But
I
I'll
don't think
see.
they've even cancelled yet, have they?
Mm-mm, no word.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I
They're waiting on that order so they can get their insurance, their force majeure
100%.
insurance. Like,
Um,
sure.
so yeah, I'll see you in Indy, or I'll see you in London.
I'll see you somewhere.
I'll see you somewhere. This has been fun. Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, dude. No worries.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for sticking around. Hope you had a good time. I'll be transcribing this. There'll be a book version someday. Um, anyway, mwah. Love you all. Bye.